dug in, started reading the tax code, and I realized there's something that's totally different that most people aren't aware of, and that's the self-directed space where you can actually do things other than just mutual funds.
Welcome back to Abundant Culture Podcast,
where we dissect the mindsets and tactics of the true beasts of business.
People like Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, and Warren Buffett.
All to create a blueprint to experience life more abundantly. Hey everybody, it's Joseph here from Abundant Culture Podcast. We're so glad to have you back again this week because we're going to be talking about a topic that is not only important to entrepreneurs, but everybody in general. And that topic is going to be retirement accounts. Now, usually this topic is super boring and dry, and people don't like to talk about their money because they feel like they might not even have enough in order to retire, and they don't understand them and all of these problems. But we're going to clear all of that up for you today. And not only that, we're not talking about the traditional retirement plans. We're not even talking about self-directed retirement plans. We're actually talking about the best self-directed retirement plan, which is an eQRP, which stands for Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan. And this retirement plan not only has way higher contribution limits, but it also has way more flexibility and allows you to invest more and do more with your retirement plan. And it's going to take some of that anxiety away from not having enough in order to retire, because you're going to find out some really cool benefits that an eQRP has over every other retirement plan, including self-directed retirement plans. And the person that's going to be talking with us today is the person who actually created the eQRP. That person is Damion Lupo. Hey, nice to have you on today's podcast, Damien. We're so glad to have you because we believe that you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of content to offer our viewers. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on to the Abundant Culture Podcast. We just wanted to say thank you for that first.
I'm happy to be here, you guys. It's great to be on with you. And I don't know if it's a lot of experience or a lot of scars, but I can tell you the scars are definitely there.
Oh, for sure. Well, we'll get into those too as well. But before we get into the main content, what we like to ask our guests is just to really explain to us really their background, their story, how they got into business, and how they got into doing what it is that they do now currently. So if you don't mind, take us through that journey a little bit.
The way that I started business back like a bazillion years ago, back when I was like literally 11 years old, was out of necessity because I was told something by my parents. A lot of us get mad because our parents tell us no. And sometimes that's where it ends, where my parents said, no, we don't have any money. We can't buy this or afford this. And I said, well, that's not good enough for me. So I was already kind of ornery and impetulant. And so I said, I'm going to go figure out a way to afford to do what I want to do. And so I started out buying and selling Nintendo games. And this was my business. And for those of you that don't, this is like Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, like original.
Yeah.
If you're in your early 20s, you're like, what is this guy talking about? I don't know what that is. Is that like Mortal Kombat or Fortnite? I don't know. I don't know what's going on today. I can't even figure out how to
I know, right?
So yeah, but it was like most of my businesses, and I've started over 50 businesses in the last 25 years. They were all really kind of a necessity for something I wanted or some problem I saw. And I think that's one of the things that we can, if we're smarter in business, we look for a problem that we can solve instead of something that we just enjoy doing, because there's really a trifecta of skills that we have, a passion we have, and a market demand. And if you can get those three things to match up, you've got the opportunity for creating something really magical. And if you only have 2 out of 3 and you don't have a way for the third, you're probably beating a dead horse and you're going to go off a cliff eventually. And I've done that a few dozen times too. So I have that experience. I can tell you about those.
Excellent. So I don't think we've ever actually had somebody on the podcast who have started like literally 50 companies. That's a wealth of experience that I don't think anybody should really take for granted. Can you give us a little insight on like the types of companies that you probably, started and scaled, and give us some of those successes and failures that you've ran into in the past with that?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is that there's more failures and there's more flops than there are successes. And that's the nature of going and being willing to say, okay, this didn't work, or I was wrong. And a lot of times people are in one thing for too long because they're not willing to admit that they made a mistake or that that was stupid or it's time to kill the thing. And so these things have ranged from insurance companies, precious metals companies, venture capital, real estate development, private lending, Nintendo, car watching. I mean, you name it. I had a business around some problem, and sometimes it was, sometimes I just went out and said, okay, well, I'm gonna sell something like insurance. Not necessarily a problem that was unique for my solution wasn't necessarily unique, but some of these things were really valuable in the skills that they develop. And I think that's one of the things that people miss when you go into a business or a job. The biggest thing you can do is not necessarily say this has to be it, but to develop yourself, especially when you're 20, 30, 40 years old. You go in there saying, okay, how can I learn? And if you're in a place where you're not learning at least 50% of the time, it may be time for you to kind of shift, whether it's your business or something else, because you're really not stretching anymore. And especially if you're an employee, if you're just doing the same thing over and over, you're not going to have 10 or 20 years of experience. You're going to have 1 year of experience 20 times, and nobody cares. It's not valuable in the market anymore. So I've just gone out there and done a lot of things. And when I did them, I would go full in, all in. I didn't just try something. Like I was a hyper crazy person like Gary Vee or Grant Cardone's. Like I was nuts, and I learned a lot really fast. And sometimes I learned, man, this is not the right business for me. And then I shifted. So the ego is your worst enemy. I mean, Ryan Holiday talks about this in his book, Ego is the Enemy. It's true. I mean, it really can be. It can also serve you if you let it drive you. But you don't want to have it drive you off a cliff either. I mean, that's dumb.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Just allowing it to drive you, but not necessarily steer you totally. I totally believe in that as well. So kind of how did you get into the space that you are now? Can you explain to the audience what you do now and how you kind of happen upon that? Because that's going to be what the bulk of what we talk about today. I feel like the rest of your experience is awesome too. So we might need a part 2 one day, but we kind of want to figure out like, how did you get into the space that you're in now, and what is that space, and what all does it actually entail currently?
Well, I'll rewind just a minute back to when I first started real estate. There was one of the problems when I started investing in real estate about 20 years ago was that I eventually ran out of money like the first day. And that's not any money. So this becomes a problem. Some people go, well, I've got money, and then you're going to run out. And those that don't have money, you say, well, how do I go and do anything if I don't have money? And after years of investing, what I started realizing is there's a lot of money sitting in people's accounts, and most of that money is in their retirement accounts. And for a long time, I was just driving myself into wealth, but I didn't really have a purpose behind it. It was just like more money. And about 10 years ago, I kind of had a shift where I lost $20 million. And I thought maybe I should look at life a little differently, try something different, because that didn't really work. And I had to start over. And when I was starting over, I noticed some things that the people like my parents were really struggling. They'd played by the rules. They had their 401k and they saved. And then they woke up one day and they really didn't have a whole lot there. And it was because the system was feeding off of them. It was taking these fees that were really eating up their wealth. And that seemed pretty unfair and pretty out of control and outrageous. So I said, okay, well, what are the options out there? And I didn't really see any until one day some guy said, hey, I want to use my retirement money to buy some silver. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought you could buy mutual funds.
Right. And crazy person.
He's a crazy person. And I said, well, shoot, let me go look into this. And I went and looked, dug in, started reading the tax code. And I realized there's something that's totally different that most people aren't aware of. And that's the self-directed space, where you can actually do things other than just mutual funds. And that's when I started really getting heavy into this and learning. And then I wrote a book on it called the eQRP book. And I wanted to start educating people. I realized that this was something that the population didn't know about. People were investing, and the most of their money, there's $30 trillion in real estate, or sorry, in the retirement system. $30 trillion. That's where all the liquidity is. Most people have their house and they have their retirement account. And then they're like, okay, I hope it works.
That's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Hoping it works. You're going to smoke some hopium and maybe I'll wake up one day and have some money. Like, that is a terrible strategy. Smoking hopium, don't do it. Right. So I said, all right, well, I can educate people. And then there's another opportunity here. And that is to introduce this whole system to the market. And most people had heard about something called a self-directed IRA. And the more I dug into that, I thought, wow, okay, this is interesting, but people are still getting feed to death. And
certainly
people want to do real estate when they're thinking about alternative assets other than mutual funds.
Mhm.
And then when I dug really deep, what I found was that people were getting taxed inside their IRA when they were buying real estate, and nobody even knew it. They're like, "Wait, what's happening? Why didn't anybody
Wow.
tell me?" I was like, "Well, nobody knows."
Yeah.
And except now you're getting a tax bill when you made your money in your IRA. And so there was another product that was developed called the eQRP, and that is a self-directed retirement account, and it allows you to invest in almost anything you want, including real estate, and not getting hit with that tax anymore. It's taxes exempt. And this was a game changer for people where they could go, all right, I'm going to go invest in, maybe it's a group like a syndication where a bunch of people invest together in an apartment, or they want to buy a house and flip it, or they want to buy some silver, all these different options. And like, wow, I actually have checkbook control of my money and I can do what I want and I don't get taxed. Like
Yeah.
all my dumb friends over there with their self-directed IRAs, they're getting taxed, but not me. So it really did create this kind of this movement where people are realizing there's a better way than the conventional wisdom and all the marketing machines that are telling them they should do a certain thing. Those machines are shooting all over everybody, and it's really not cool. So this
Yeah.
is it's a different way for people to have power and control of their retirement money, and so they can start really designing their life versus having something by default. That's the entire premise of what we do.
For sure.
So is the eQRP like, so we literally like learned about this maybe like 2 months ago or a month ago.
Yeah, it's
Like
about
it
a
was
month
like
ago. It wasn't very
very,
long.
very recent.
I still haven't even worked with it, honestly. I'm just still trying to figure out, like, oh,
Right.
what is this?
So like
What's up?
when did this product come out? Is it new and that's why people aren't really talking about it, or is it like old and people just don't know?
Well, the original this whole retirement space started in the 1970s when ERISA was passed into law in the in the early 1970s. So this has been around for 45 years. But
Mhm.
what happens is these laws are put into place, and then the big institutions say, how can we make money off of these laws? And so they set up mutual funds and 401ks. And so they basically told people, here's what you can do. And people didn't ask questions. And eventually that some people said, well, maybe we can do something different. We can actually offer people some options with self-directed IRAs. And
Mhm.
so bigger custodians started being created. They went into business. Same type of thing. Again, they got feed. And so some people have heard of self-directed IRAs because of the marketing machine, but
Mhm.
it's all about fees. So if you just follow the money in anything, you can figure out why certain things are the way they are.
Yeah.
And when you look at retirement accounts, all the fees are by certain institutions and they tell you about their products to give them more fees. And that's a big difference because I just fundamentally don't agree that because you're babysitting my money, I should be paying you 1 or 2 or 3% a year just to stare at my money. You're probably golfing anyway. You're probably not even looking at my money.
Yeah.
So why am I paying? And that's what most people are doing. They're paying fees because they don't know they have another option. And this is an option for people that are on their own, people that have employees, people that are an employee that have a side hustle. Like just about anybody can do this. There's really nobody I've ever run into that wanted to do this that couldn't do it. They just didn't know about it.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. So, like, one of my main questions are, I guess, um, like, so this EQRP idea has been a thing since, was it one of the things that kind of popped up in the 70s, or was it something that kind of branched out from that? Or like do we kind of know how it really came into fruition? Because like literally I've been in real estate for not very long, just 2 years, but everybody talks about self-directing like it's like the end all be all, like it's the thing. And then I found out about this EQRP thing, I think from um like one of my friends, and then it led me to a video on YouTube that you were on, and I'm like, well, self-directing ain't all that cool anymore. So like how did, like, do you know kind of when it kind of popped up, and like so who was the, I guess, the first to kind of offer that as to be an alternative to the self-directed IRA?
Well, so the self-directed space where you could have like your own 401k, these type of things have been around for that specific thing. The legislation with Congress changed it in the early 2000s, so almost 20 years now that particular nuance has been around. We created the EQRP, so that is our own intellectual property. It's what we created, so that it's nobody else does this. People have different offshoots, and people try to say, well, I've got this product, and reality is they've got some cookie cutter product that really doesn't. It's not as good and it's not as in depth. It's not as protective. It doesn't give as many options. One of the common ones is like a solo 401k. And a lot of people have looked at those and they go, well, is that what this is? And I say, no, it's not. They're both under the 401 code. So just a little nuance. If you're kind of a geek like me, you want to go dig in. IRA under, okay, good. So the IRAs are under section 408 of the IRS code, and all the other stuff is kind of under 401. That's where 401ks are at, solo 401ks. That's where the eQRP is built under, but they're built differently. And I've actually had some interesting videos that I've seen where there's been some attorneys that were ranting because they literally sat still and didn't provide a better service to their clients. And their clients are saying, hey, I want an eQRP. And they go, you don't need an eQRP. And that's nothing anyway. It's just a solo. And I laughed and I said, well, it's not, but you can say it is because you're unwilling to actually expand and grow and do something better. Solos are just a generic trust under the 401. And the eQRP is something that we built because we saw the market gap where people wanted to have something, even when they had employees, they wanted to invest in real estate. We realized that there is not protection with solo 401ks for lawsuits in many states because so ERISA governs, like ERISA is the code in the 70s that governs these retirement accounts. And it doesn't cover the individual operator, an individual solo, like it does with a big company. So like if you get sued and you've got a 401k, if it's a big company, forget it. It's never going to be touched. Like the courts they can't touch it because ERISA is very strong. Yeah. An individual plan does not have the same protections. So we built something different that covers people, that really gives them protections and gives them flexibility. And that's what people want. They don't want to lose their money, and they want to be able to do what they want, and they don't want to have the thing blow up if they go hire somebody because their business is good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So another question I had is, you mentioned fees before, getting charged, anywhere from 2 to maybe 4% in a 401k or something like that. And people hear like numbers like 2 and 4%. And on $10,000, it doesn't sound like a big deal. But when you have $500,000, couple $1 million, like that becomes a very, very huge number. So how is the eQRP different in its fee structure than the traditional, 401ks or self-directed IRAs? Give us a little bit of insight on that as well.
So in terms of the cost and the structure, eQRP is flat. It's a flat setup. It's a flat annual. And and pretty much everything else in the market is all about how can we get as much money and extract as much money based on your account. If your account keeps growing, their fee keeps growing. They're not doing anything different. And so even if they say, well, it's a flat fee, and then we charge you for all these little things. And so, I've seen IRAs that were charging $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year for one person. And I've had a number of clients that they've had 401ks where their money was in cash. And what they were paying in fees for the money to be in cash was 3 times as much as it cost for them to set up their plan when we built their plan. One time. And they were paying that every year, 3 times. And it's a crazy system that's really good for the system. It's just not very good for the person that's actually in the system. You're basically being harvested. It's like being in the Matrix or something. It's crazy.
That's nuts.
That is.
That's absolutely crazy. Like, and this is why I wanted to have this episode, because I'm like, if you're gonna have a retirement plan, I don't see why you wouldn't have the best. And before I heard about this, self-directed sound like the best, and then now I'm looking at eQRPs, and it's like, just wow, it's really blowing my mind. Mm-hmm. But what are some of the things that I know in self-directed, you can invest in almost everything? Is there anything different that like about the eQRP? Like, is there any other asset class that you can invest in? Because I think with the self-directed plan, they didn't allow you to invest in like collectibles or art or something like that. And I just wanted to know if that was pretty much the same rule between the two, or is that a little bit different now?
So you can invest in just about anything. And if you wanted to invest in collectibles, you simply just have to invest in a company that's investing in collectibles. I mean, that's a way to do it. You can't go buy a bunch of wine, but could you buy a wine stock in a wine company? Sure. Could you go have a small wine store that had a whole bunch of wine? Yeah, why not? It doesn't make any difference. It's just you can't have the plan buying the collectible or the consumable directly. And same thing with people want to do collectible cars. Can't do collectible cars, but could you own a dealership that did collectible cars? Sure, why not? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do things, and if you just ask a better question, typically you can figure it out. One thing that's very, very black and white is that you cannot buy precious metals with a self-directed IRA and hold it. And there's a lot of companies that are actually telling people they can, and that's a disqualified transaction. And one of the big mistakes is if you use an IRA and you do something disqualified, you can blow up the entire IRA because of the one wrong move. The penalties are severe. And with an eQRP, you can actually buy gold and silver and take possession of it because you're the trustee. So you've got control and power and what we call no counterparty risk. That means nobody can do anything that's going to impact you because you're holding the dang asset in your house, maybe wherever you want to put it that's safe. And then you can buy real estate and have debt. If you do that with an IRA, you get hit with UBIT tax. That can be as high as 37% tax. With an eQRP, it's zero because it's exempt. So massive difference. There's literally no reason if you have a choice. If you can do a self-directed IRA or an eQRP, there's no good reason why you would do a self-directed IRA. It's literally the dumbest thing unless you're stuck with it. And there are two reasons you'd be stuck. One, you have a Roth IRA or you inherited an IRA. Those things are stuck as IRAs. But if you don't have one of those two things and you're keeping it, I got to ask you why.
Yeah, for sure. And for our guests who may not necessarily know, can you explain UBIT tax a little bit? And then after this, we're probably going to go into UDFI because I thought that was really cool. I mean, is it UBIT or UDFI? I can't remember which one was which.
Unrelated business taxable income, or UBIT, which makes it's just easier to say than UBIT or something. I don't know how you say it, but so unrelated business income tax. It's a tax on certain things that happen, like trusts. And basically, because a retirement account is a type of a trust, it can be taxed. Like if you have an active business that you invested in, UBIT it taxes that your income for IRAs, 401ks, anything. So it can be up to 37% on any type of income that's coming in, and that's pretty brutal considering it's supposed to be a tax shelter. Well, the other thing that is the big difference between the IRAs and the eQRP is that you've got the UDFI. We'll go right into that because that's the big bite. It's the unrelated debt financed income, and what that means is if you basically invest, say, $100,000 into a property, well, and then you bought it for $100,000. Well, it's just you. It's just your retirement account investing. If you put $100,000 in and then you borrowed $300,000, you're kind of getting a benefit from something other than just your money. And so the IRS says, okay, we're not going to let IRAs do that because they're making, that's kind of taking advantage of the system. And so they say any of the profits that are proportional to the debt. So like if you had 75% debt, then 75% of your profits are subject to this tax. So UDFI triggers UBIT, and with an eQRP, it's exempt because the tax code is written that way. And right now, things are always changing. There's a big piece of legislation that's changing things to push a lot of annuities into 401ks at the end of 2019. Things are always changing. Congress is always looking for ways to spend money over here and pull it from over there. Spend it there.
For sure.
So we don't know where it's going to go. Right now, there is an exemption. And so what's happening is people are saying, well, I've got my IRA. It's been invested. What do I do? It's already invested in real estate. And you can switch it. You can literally move the asset from the IRA into an eQRP, and it's now exempt. It's called an inkind rollover. And that allows you to fix the problem. Because if you don't fix the problem, when that asset sells, the tax bill is going to make you want to puke.
Wow. That's amazing. So we took people from a situation where they literally only knew about self-directed accounts, the traditional self-directed accounts, and they had no choice on UBIT or UDFI tax. And now they're in a situation where if they switch over to an eQRP, not only can they probably invest in more types of assets, but they don't have to worry about the UBIT or UDFI, meaning that if they wanted to do something like buy a franchise in an eQRP, that is possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. You have options. Like the restrictions on what you can and can't invest in are further limited with a self-directed IRA because of a custodian. And here's the thing: custodians are also very slow. So I'm not a huge fan. It's just because they put restrictions and they make things a pain. It can take 3 weeks to get something done, and sometimes they'll say no. They'll just say no, not because it's not allowed, but because they don't understand it. And this is a huge problem if you want to do a certain type of investment and it's not disallowed, because the IRS doesn't say, here are the things you can do. They say, here's what you can't do. If it's not on the list of can't do, it's okay. And so that having a custodian in the way of you doing your deals, the only downside is if you're crazy or reckless, you might do something really stupid against the rules. And so a custodian might actually be beneficial to you. And I think that there are some people that I've talked to that literally should stick with their custodian because they're just a little bit too on the edge. And they think, oh, if I have a checkbook, I can do anything. I'm like, you cannot invest in, a cocaine distribution center. That is not okay.
Oh, okay.
See, I
Okay.
honestly don't even know if that's
I
disqualified.
thought you were gonna say like a boat or something like that, but
Right.
that went way left. I didn't
Yeah.
expect that. But so anyway, another question I was really curious about is okay.
So a
You go
question
first.
I
then.
had before I lost it is so there's no disqualified person with the EQRP then, or is there still that disqualified person?
Yeah, great question. Same parties are disqualified. So
Okay.
you can't invest your retirement account with like a parent or a child if they're doing a deal. There are certain parties that you can't invest with, but basically like brothers, sisters, cousins, uh, friends, like they're all totally fine. It's one of those weird things. We don't really know why the IRS chose these particular people that you can't invest with. I don't know,
Yeah.
But it's I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it completely legally, black and white, not gray. And I think if you just have a professional, and a lot of times what I see is people are thinking Google's that they're their teammate or something. And so they go out there and they go, well, Google said, and I say, really, what does Google say? Google says anything you want it to say because
Everything.
the algorithm will literally find you a blog post that has the wrong information based on a company or an individual that has an opinion and they're not actually using code. So, like for example, the QRP book is based on an IRS code. A tax attorney vetted every page of that thing, and it's noted and documented where the information came from. Not my opinion; it's the IRS.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important for people to find a trusted team because truly one of the dumb things that we do is we think we're supposed to do things on our own, and we're like, "Ooh, I'll use Google." It's kind of cheating, but not because I'm going to go find some information. No, you know how you get rich in the real world? You have a team. You have really smart people that are specialists, and they're around you, and they're the ones that have the expertise and the specialized information. If you think that Google is going to do your stuff and you're going to be your own lawyer and your own accountant, you're literally going off that cliff. So buckle up and get a parachute because you're heading there.
Yeah, for sure,
Mhm.
for sure. So another thing you mentioned a little while before, the only reason you wouldn't be able to roll over to a EQRP is if you had an inherit or a Roth IRA. One
So there,
thing I was wondering is with the Roth IRA, like what's the story behind that? Because I heard that, but I didn't understand like why you wouldn't be able to go from a Roth to like a EQ, like a EQRP.
So here's the strange thing. One of my mentors who passed away is Jim Rohn, and one of the things he used to say was people would ask a question. They'd say, "Well, why is it like that?" And Jim would say, "You're asking the wrong question." And he'd say, "Because I don't know the sun's coming up and it's going down, and that's just how God made it." And so sometimes when the IRS has rules, we say that's how the IRS made it, and we don't have any idea because bureaucrats tend to do rules that sometimes don't make any sense, or they do make sense to them, but we're trying to figure out why. We don't really know. The Roth IRA is there's a lot of theory around this, but bottom line is there's more money in IRAs right now. There's like $7 trillion in IRAs alone. And I think that that's where the IRS is looking for ways to make the most money. So if they keep the money in the IRA, the Roth IRA, maybe that's better because if it's a Roth IRA and it invests in real estate with leverage, the IRS is getting paid. If it's a Roth EQRP and they invest in real estate, they're not getting paid. So
Oh,
it kind of I feel like that may be one of the reasons. I don't know. The bottom line is if you've got a Roth IRA, unfortunately you're stuck. Um, Further money should be looked at a little differently. Maybe put into a different like a standard IRA and then rolling it over. There's a lot of options. And then the inherited thing, it's just one of those things.
yeah,
I
it's
don't
just
know
one of
why.
those weird things. Yeah,
Yeah, so we just deal with it is as is.
yeah, for sure. Are there any kind of nuanced rules about inheriting maybe a EQRP, or is it really similar to inheriting any other um, retirement account?
So any retirement account that's inherited turns into an IRA. It's 100%. That's what happens. If you inherit a Roth account, it becomes a Roth IRA. If you inherit a deferred account, it becomes a deferred IRA. This is just across the board. It's how it is. So one of the things we have right now, and this could change because legislation is changing. There's a thing called a stretch where you basically inherit something and then you get to build it, spend it, grow it the rest of your life. That actually is looking like it may change because the legislation is written so that you'd have to pull it out within 10 years, which is kind of a bummer because you think about getting a an account that was Roth, and you get to grow it and spend it the rest of your life. You literally could invest and spend and do whatever you want, not pay taxes ever again. So these are some pretty compelling reasons to have these. And even if it's 10 years, think about that. If you have parents or grandparents, you know what, go get them going with an account and ask them. Like I did that with my dad many years ago. And I hired him, and it was so that he would, well, one, it was kind of a good incentive to get him to come hang out in Texas with me. But the
Yeah.
other thing was, I said, Dad, I want to be able to provide income to you so that you can put some of that into a retirement account, and then down the road, I'll inherit it, and that way we can do some planning, some tax planning that's beneficial to our family. We keep more money in our family versus having it going to the federal government. And
Yeah,
so
for
it's a
sure.
really good conversation to have with family members, parents, and grandparents, because I don't think that they're going, nope, you should have less money. The government should have more. I mean, if you're AOC, perhaps like she probably thinks that's better, but I just fundamentally disagree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So another question I thought about is the age that you can take the money out of like these traditional retirement accounts is 59 and a half, right?
Mhm.
So is that still the case with the EQRP, or is it different?
Yeah, the ages for to pull stuff out are the same. They're 59 and a half, unless you have different hardship type of events, or there's something called a 72T where you can start taking distributions earlier than 59 and a half over your lifetime. So there are some ways to get money out earlier. Here's the best way, and you can actually do it at any age. If you have Roth money that you've put in, you can take that money that you put in out anytime. Month after you put it in, 5 years after you put in. And if you're saying, well, all my money is deferred, okay, well, you can convert it to Roth once it's in an eQRP. So let's say you have 100,000 bucks, you convert it to Roth in your eQRP. 5 years from now, you can pull that $100,000 out. All those gains continue to grow tax free, and you get to pull them out, all that stuff out at 59 and a half. But you can pull your $100,000 out, no penalty, after 5 years from the date of conversion. So some ways to get access to your money a lot earlier than you thought.
Oh, wow. Did not know this.
We didn't know a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you talking about? Google didn't tell you this? I mean, this is the
No.
problem.
Yeah.
There's
I can't trust Google with everything. Like I Google some stuff, but when it comes to money stuff, it's like I prefer to talk to somebody
Google
professional.
doesn't even know this stuff. You ask Google, and it's like asking Siri or whatever. You ask Siri, and Siri says, "I don't know how to answer that." Well, that's what Google would say. It'd be like, "I don't know. This is too complex. Go talk to an advisor. Talk to an accountant. Talk to an attorney."
Mhm.
That's the reality. This stuff is so nuanced. Most CPAs don't even know this stuff because they don't focus on it. It's a very narrow niche. It's something that you have to spend many years. I've spent the last 10 years in one little niche in the tax code, and that's all I've been doing. And that allows me to be able to go deep into things. I actually teach a lot of accountants, a lot of CPAs all over the country because it's unique information that they just haven't gone deep into, and there's not really a place for them to get all the information that's relevant to their clients unless they come to a firm that specializes, and that's what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Another thing I wanted to ask about is the contribution limit to the EQRB, EQRP. What exactly are the contribution limits, and how does that differ from traditional self-directed IRA? Anyway.
So the contribution limits on IRAs are typically about $6,000. So people say, well, that's great, and I say, really? So 20 years from now, your contributions are going to equal 100,000. You're not going to be rich. You're just going to be old. So like this isn't going to help you.
Yes.
The alternative is an EQRP where you can put up to $56,000 per person. So like if there's two of you in a household, you could literally put over $110,000 into it at any age,
Boom.
literally. And so it's based on the income you're making. How much self-employment income are you making? If you're out there flipping houses making income, you could put a whole bunch of that money in there and shield it from taxes. And there's some ways to do that where you can shield it and push it into Roth so that it's never taxed and not pay taxes on the way in either. There's some cool stuff with this. So imagine never paying taxes, getting money into a Roth account, and then never paying taxes when you actually pulled it out. That's the power with what happened with the tax code in 2017. People, whether you're for it or against it, it really gave everybody an opportunity if they're going to use the retirement accounts and real estate combined because of something called the real estate professional designation. And when you're designated a real estate professional, you can do some pretty neat things where you can use depreciation to offset your active income. And so this is the kind of stuff that, again, if you're talking to Google, you're going to get lost. But if you
Yeah.
have the right people around you, you go to the right seminars, listen to the right podcasts, and listen to the right experts, all of a sudden you realize, wow, there's a reason that, people are going to have their opinions on Donald Trump's tax returns. Well, what I think people are going to find if they look at very wealthy people that do a lot of real estate is they don't pay taxes.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
because the tax code is set up to incentivize people to do certain things that the government sucks at. It's not good at building housing. It's not
Right.
good at employing people.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not efficient. So if people that are doing real estate stuff, they're highly incentivized, meaning they don't pay taxes because the government needs them. And that's an opportunity for all of us to really use that and the retirement space because the government also knows it can't pay for everybody to retire. Like, it's real obvious.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, they screwed that one up
yeah,
once, at
Yeah.
least once. But
exactly.
okay, ahead.
So what is your overall vision for the EQRP?
A million people's financial shackles broken. It's very clear. When you have a million people that have their financial shackles, when their financial bondage is broken
Mhm.
and they are clear and clean and money is no longer the thing that limits them and scares them, keeps them up at night, all of a sudden it changes how they approach life. They start doing things. There's a guy running for president named Andrew Yang that wants to give everybody $1,000. It's called universal basic income.
Mhm.
And this is an idea. I think if you teach people, my friend Robert Kiyosaki has been doing this for decades. If you teach people about financial literacy and they become financially literate, then all of a sudden they're able to do things that are really tapping into the reason that they're here. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a friend of mine. He's been retired for 10 years. He's in his early 40s. And I said, so tell me about your, like, I was learning, like, what happened? He goes, I was told by my grandfather years ago, he said, retire as early as you can so that you can find your life's purpose. And he works and he plays and he lives. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do anything other than sitting on a beach with pina coladas. What it means is that he's not a slave, that his shackles are broken. And for us to break people's financial shackles because we're empowering them with a tool and giving them the education and helping them understand that they can actually trust themselves. These are different messages than we get from institutions that tell us we're too stupid to run our own money. That's what we're told. You're too stupid. Give us your money and trust us because it's too complicated for you. That's BS.
Really
Mhm.
BS, yeah.
BS.
Yeah, especially when you take into consideration, and this for the viewers, like that most of those guys honestly don't even know what they're doing either. So
Yeah.
like, and that's the craziest part. Like
Mhm.
they're telling you to trust them, and then they go and invest your money, and they're lost. They don't know when it's going to go up, how it's going to go up, why it's going to go up, anything like that. So
The entire system is set up. If you actually, one of the greatest pieces of advice for any financial services that you're thinking about, when somebody's selling you an investment or an opportunity or whatever, the question is, how is that person making their money? Are they making money off commissions? Are they making money off of fees? Are they making money because they are good at picking something? And if you look at financial advisors and life insurance salespeople, they make their money off of selling the thing. They don't make their money off the thing. Warren Buffett's an exception, and Ray Dalio's an exception. There are exceptions. The masses are buying products from people that make commissions, and that's how the system is set up. So, really ask people. Like, I remember buying life insurance from a guy years ago, and I said, "I want to see your balance sheet. I want to see your personal financial statement." He showed it to me, and I was like, "Got it." He had like $4 million in cash value in his life insurance policy. I'm not a big fan of life insurance. I think it has a place, but he really believed in it. He wasn't just making commissions and playing. He was literally buying the same stuff he was selling me. And I said, "You are in alignment with what you're selling me. And so therefore I'm buying from you."
absolutely,
I love
I
that.
believe in that 100%.
Mhm.
So, what is the number one takeaway you want someone to actually get from listening to this podcast episode? Because this was literally one of my actual favorite financial podcast episodes. So, what's that takeaway that you want them to get, really?
So here's the thing. Everybody's probably heard of this point about The Secret, where you can think your way into things. You can like will it, and things will happen if you just think about it really hard. You cannot think your way into having a bag of money fall from the sky and hit you in the head. And if your strategy is buying a lottery ticket, you're screwed. So here's what I suggest you do. What I want you to do is grab your phone right now, because you're probably listening to this on your phone, or you got a phone nearby, because how far away do we go from our phone? About 5 feet, we start to have a panic attack.
Yeah, right.
Grab your phone and text the word eQRP to the number 72,000. And if you do that, it's you taking action. So two things are going to happen. One, you're going to start activating your body, your physiology, and two, you're going to get a report on that's going to summarize what this is and some of the ideas that we've been talking about. And you can read that. You can also share that with people, because the best way to learn something is to teach and do. So I'm going to invite everybody to text that word eQRP to 72,000 and get that report. Continue the education and go beyond the education. Do something with it, because truly what we're afraid of is making mistakes and looking stupid, and the judgment, because we've been trained our whole lives, don't make mistakes because you'll look dumb. Well, you know who looks dumb? The person that never made mistakes, that's on their deathbed going, dang, I wish I'd have done something. That's what's dumb.
For sure, definitely. So, oh, go ahead.
So you're on the Abundant Culture podcast. So we have to ask you, as we ask all of our guests, how do you spread abundance?
By freeing people from financial bondage. There's so much abundance, but when we're in our own shackles, we are literally in a human cell inside of our own minds.
Mm-hmm.
And by breaking those chains, it opens people up to a whole world where they can actually see that there is abundance. We truly are in an abundant world. I mean, that's the fact. But if we put ourselves in chains and shackles, we're never gonna actually experience it, because it's all going to be scarcity. It's all going to be, here's my fixed amount of money. Here's my, because what's money? Money is just a resource. It's energy. And if we see it as fixed, that's not abundant. That's really scarce. And so breaking those chains is how people see abundance, by getting out of their own way and unlocking themselves from that trap.
For sure.
Love it.
Yeah, so we've covered a lot today. And honestly, if I did not have a call at 3, I would have attempted to keep you on for another 30 minutes. But I want to respect your time, and I also want to respect our viewers' time and all that stuff. And I think there's so many people that need to learn more about this. They need to get in contact with you, your team. They need to study all that they can and just learn everything they possibly can, not only about finance, but this particular type of retirement plan called the eQRP, because I know if my friends don't know about it, there's a lot of people that don't know about it. So how can somebody actually reach out to you and get connected to you to just learn more about you and what you're doing?
First place to start is literally that report. I want to have everybody do that one thing. So awesome. One of the things that I realize is that our brains can't, we think we can multitask. We think we can go do 5 things at once, but we don't have 5 arms and 5 brains, and like that doesn't work. Right. So just, we all know everybody has a phone. So just start with getting the report. Text the word eQRP to 72,000. That's the one thing you can do to change your life today with new information and new ideas. You're going to set yourself free. You're going to possibly set somebody you love free. And then you're going to end up being a hero. And what's more important than helping other people become free from financial bondage?
Absolutely. Man.
This was a great episode. Yeah. So you are so knowledgeable, and we thank you so much for your time in coming onto the podcast and educating our listeners on how to free themselves of those shackles of the retirement plans. This is the way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy everybody's listening, and you guys do that one thing. Take that one step and fundamentally change your life. It takes a step. It's not just an idea. You got to do something with it. But thank you.
Definitely. Text the number, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's all we have for today, folks. I hope you got as much value out of this as we did. Keep in mind, the only way we can improve is through constructive feedback. So remember to rate and review this episode. Also, you are not the only person that needs to know this super valuable information. So be sure to subscribe and share as well. Stay tuned for the next episode. And remember to always spread abundance. Peace.